Hi, I'm Kelly Holowecki, and this is my Unit 1 review mini presentation. I have chosen to present on the role of women in music in ancient Egypt and the Middle Ages. Thanks for watching. In ancient Egypt, both men and women were musicians. However, women of all classes were able to partake in music making. The female musicians were taught and directed by an elite woman who was given the title of the Great One of the Troupe of Musical Performers. Their music was used for spiritual purposes, where they sang hymns and played a sistrum, which is a rattle that was used to pacify gods and goddesses. As we fast forward to the Middle Ages, there was a great deal of conflict in education in general, which includes music education and women's education. It's important to note that women's music education was viewed differently by different regions due to opposing religious, social, and political views. For example, in pre-Islamic Arabia and Mesopotamia, men were socially prohibited from music performance, leaving the occupation to be filled by women up until the 9th century. However, the same cannot be said for women in Europe. During the Middle Ages, few cases exist of girls of upper class who were given benefits of education, which was controlled by the church. It was due to their obligations as women of nobility that required them to be literate. The primary focus of women's education during this time was to help her become a good wife and mother. Most ancient Greek women, especially Athenians, were not educated or seen as equals until the advent of Christianity. We read in our text that the Hellenistic period in Athens was centered on competition. This mindset led some choirs to seek professional musicians rather than amateurs, which eventually led to the decline of music education. However, this period also introduced hetairas, or companions. Unlike Greek wives who were seen more as servants to their husbands, and young girls who were educated only in domestic arts from their mothers, hetairas were female companions who were permitted an education and the right to travel freely. When Charlemagne came into power from 768 to 814, he brought with him the revival of education. Women in Greece were now able to receive formal education for the first time through convent schools in the late 8th century, where their music education focused mainly on choral studies. Venice became the center of convent schools. With their newfound education, women were able to come into roles that were formerly only fulfilled by men. One example is of the Countess of Dia, who traveled and performed as a troubadouress, a female troubadour. At this time, women were unable to speak out about marital problems, and the Countess composed and performed love songs to the courts as a release. Here's a clip of one of her compositions, Chantar Mère. Even though music education was now an option for women and some were able to break through the social barriers, music performance and instruction was still heavily dominated by men. Women created opportunities within their own private circles as teachers, recitalists, and founders of their own orchestra. In review, in ancient Egypt, women of all classes were musicians under the direction of an elite woman who was known as the Great One of the Troupe of Musical Performers. During the early Middle Ages, music education for women rarely existed in Europe. Those who received education were of the upper class, as they were expected to fulfill obligations as nobility. In Hellenistic Greece, hetairas, or female companions, were able to seek education and travel freely, but all other women were expected to tend to the home and children. Also, mothers taught their daughters in domestic arts only. When Charlemagne came into power in 768, he brought with him a desire for educational revival, and this sparked the start of convent schools, where girls' music education focused on choral singing. With their music education, some women, like the Countess of Dia, were able to break through the performance barrier and become troubadours, where they composed and performed mainly love songs. Other women developed musical opportunities within their own circles as teachers, recitalists, and some even founded their own orchestras.